Hello, dear friends. You're watching Ruslan Beylov's channel. Today is May 27th, 2026, and this is our regular breakdown of the situation along the line of contact. If you're watching us for the first time, please subscribe to the channel and make sure to hit the bell so you don't miss any episodes. This matters because YouTube systematically suppresses the reach of military analytical content, and without your engagement, the algorithm simply hides us from new viewers. Every like, every comment, every subscription is real support for the channel. A special thank you to our sponsors and everyone who supported us through Super Thanks. You help us keep working every day. So today there are changes on several sections of the front. The most significant events are unfolding in the Kostiantynivka direction, where the AFU's position inside the city is deteriorating rapidly. But let's go through things in order. We'll cover the entire line of contact. Geopolitical backdrop, tensions are mounting. Before we get to the front, a few words about what's happening at the diplomatic and political level. Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a formal warning that, in the event of further escalation, strikes will be carried out against administrative buildings in Kyiv. At the same time, the MFA recommended that European embassies leave the Ukrainian capital. The embassies refused. Dmitry Medvedev commented on this in his characteristic manner, suggesting that apparently their diplomatic staffs are bloated and could do with some downsizing. On the Ukrainian side, statements emerged claiming that 500 targets on Belarusian territory have already been identified for potential strikes, in the event that Lukashenko enters the war. For his part, Lukashenko has given no signals of any intention to intervene in the conflict. Belarus, however, reported that in just the past week alone, it recorded 116 violations of its state border by Ukrainian drones. The provocations are unmistakable, and the trajectory points toward further escalation. Northern grouping. Sumy direction, 2 settlements in 24 hours. Now to the front, where the news is genuinely good. The northern grouping is wrapping up its second consecutive month of exceptional results. This direction was long regarded as secondary, auxiliary, which makes it all the more striking that it is now producing some of the most dynamic advances along the entire front line. In the past 24 hours, 2 settlements in the Sumy region came under Russian control, Ryazna and Zapsilia. Ryazna is located in the Krasnopilia district. Fighting for this village began back in April. At that point, Russian forces managed to enter the settlement, but the AFU quickly moved up reinforcements and held their positions for a time. That redeployment brought the Ukrainian side only a brief delay. It had no impact on the final outcome. Ryazan has passed under Russian army control. It's worth noting that this is not some small hamlet. It's a fairly substantial village by local standards, with residential buildings, farm structures, and the kind of infrastructure that allows forces to consolidate and build up before pushing further. The total area of advance on this section, including Ryazan, exceeded 11 square kilometers. With the capture of Ryazan, a fully fledged Krasnopilia bridgehead is now taking shape here. The overall direction of movement points toward Krasnopilia itself and the Bohodukiv-Sumy highway. Losing that road would be extremely painful for the AFU in terms of logistics and operational management on this flank. The immediate task is to straighten the front line between Ryazna and Taratutyne, closing the pocket that has formed. The next objective after that is the villages of Lisna and Maiska, beyond which lies the highway itself. If the current pace holds, we could see this happen as early as June. Zapsilia is another significant piece of news from the same direction. The advance here unfolded across a frontage of more than 6 kilometers. This large and well-fortified village has passed fully under Russian control. The last major obstacle on the road to Sumy is now the neighboring village of Velika Rybitsia, which is also heavily fortified. Beyond it, essentially open road, there are no more large settlements between there and the outskirts of Sumy along this route. I'll be honest, I expected the fighting for Zapsilia to drag on. The terrain and the river here both favored the defending side. My assumption was that in the best case, the Russian army would finish off Zapsilia somewhere around mid-June. It was done before the end of May. The results speak for themselves. Making predictions is a thankless business, but the tempo here is genuinely impressive right now. Kostiantynivka direction, AFU caught in a trap. Perhaps the main story of the past 24 hours is what's happening in Kostiantynivka. As recently as yesterday's episode, I mentioned that the Russian army has achieved very serious results here, but at that point the mappers hadn't yet updated the map, so there was nothing to show visually. Today the map markings have appeared. Take a look for yourselves. Commentary is almost superfluous. Russian fighters from the southern grouping, following the capture of Ilyanivka, managed to push directly into Kostiantynivka, establish a foothold in the urban fabric, and begin methodically expanding their zone of control. Gradually pushing the AFU back block by block, they achieved something critically important: full occupation of the district with multi-story residential buildings. Simultaneously, pressure was maintained in the industrial zone, and Ukrainian positions in the low-rise residential sector were squeezed from the south. The decisive move came from the multi-story district, a push of more than 2 kilometers. Part of the Ukrainian units failed to withdraw in time and found themselves effectively trapped. At this moment, the encirclement has not fully closed. There is no complete 100% surrounding. However, the exit corridor is only around 750 meters wide. What does 750 meters mean in the drone age? Less than 400 meters from each side. With sustained drone monitoring, that corridor becomes an extremely dangerous withdrawal route. Around 150 AFU fighters still remaining in this pocket have essentially one way out, through that very bottleneck, which Russian drone operators are naturally keeping under constant observation. That said, it's important to understand. The outcome here does not hinge primarily on whether the encirclement is completed or not. Given the current front configuration, the Ukrainian side will not be able to hold positions in this part of the city for long regardless, whether there is a full encirclement or not. The defense here will collapse, and control over these blocks will pass to the Russian army. It's purely a matter of time. In the eastern part of the city, there is also movement. Not as dramatic as in the west, but meaningful nonetheless. Russian forces advanced more than 1 kilometer through residential development and reached Pershotravneva Street. At the same time, it's important not to build false expectations. Anticipating that Kostiantynivka will be fully under Russian control within a couple of weeks would be premature. The AFU still hold part of the industrial zone. A substantial amount of multi-story built-up area remains in the city, and their logistics have not yet been completely severed. The possibility of bringing in reinforcements persists. The realistic scenario is that the city will be finished off over the course of the summer campaign. If everything develops along the most optimistic lines for the Russian army, it's possible the city could be under control by mid-July. But that would require the current momentum to continue uninterrupted. The progress is clear, and that is unquestionably a positive sign. Krasny Lyman direction. From the Krasny Lyman direction, video material arrived from the area around the settlement of Stavki. Positional fighting continues. Forward positions of Russian forces in this area came under fire from the AFU. The Russian army, meanwhile, reports an expansion of its zone of control on the northern approaches to Krasny Lyman, an advance of approximately 1.5 kilometers. Earlier footage had shown points where Ukrainian forces penetrated up to 5 kilometers into Russian defensive lines, and video also came in from Yampil. However, no further confirmed advances by the Ukrainian army on this section are being recorded. The overall picture suggests that Russian forces are resuming active offensive operations in the direction of Lyman. Dobrovolsky direction, minor changes have been recorded in the vicinity of Hryshyn. Russian forces continue to expand their zone of control and are moving toward the settlement of Serhivka. Reports of advances in this direction from the side of Molodetsky, Udakny and Kotlino had come in repeatedly before, though for a prolonged period no confirmed map changes were visible. Movement has now resumed. Heavy fighting is underway in the Belitska area and around Rodinske, although the latter, according to available information, is already firmly under Russian military control. Heavy clashes are also being reported in the vicinity of Novyi Donbass, Zaporizhzhia. Direction confirmation has arrived that the Russian army has taken the settlement of Voskresenka. On this direction, the AFU's last defensive line has effectively been breached in 2 places. Summary of the past 24 hours. The combined results for the past 24 hours. 2 settlements came under Russian army control, with a total advance area of more than 18 square kilometers. No confirmed advances by the AFU have been recorded during this period. Oreshnik, the Strait of Hormuz, and the diplomatic front. Let's separately cover what's happening beyond the line of contact. There's plenty going on there as well. The Oreshnik topic has come back to the fore. Russia conducted another test of the hypersonic missile system, and this time it triggered a nervous reaction well beyond Ukraine's borders. European capitals once again found themselves discussing the fact that existing missile defense systems are incapable of intercepting such targets. This is not new information, but each time the subject surfaces in connection with specific events, it carries a different political weight. Russia is consistently using Oreshnik as a tool of strategic pressure, signaling above all to the European participants in the conflict just where the real threshold of escalation lies. The situation around the Strait of Hormuz continues to hold attention. Iran maintains its rhetoric about the possibility of closing the strait in the event of intensified military pressure from the United States and Israel. Traffic through Hormuz accounts for roughly 20% of all global oil, and any threats in that region are immediately reflected in oil prices and supply chains. At present, the strait is operating normally, but the tension persists. The United States has concentrated a substantial naval grouping in the region, which in itself acts as a stabilizing factor, while simultaneously serving as an irritant for Tehran. Donald Trump once again weighed in on the topic of a Ukrainian settlement. His position remains consistent. The American administration has no intention of financing the conflict indefinitely and expects concrete steps toward negotiations from both sides. Trump made clear that Washington's patience is not unlimited and hinted at the possibility of revising the formats of support if the parties do not demonstrate a readiness for dialogue. Kyiv is hearing these signals, but publicly continues to insist on its own terms. Europe remains in its customary state of discord. Some countries are leaning towards supporting the American push for de-escalation, while others are insisting on continuing support for Ukraine at the previous level. Against this backdrop, it's worth noting that the diplomatic front right now is arguably no less active than the line of contact. The negotiating track has yet to produce a result, but the volume of contacts and statements is growing. Where this leads, the near future will show. That's all for today. Thank you for watching and reading. If the episode was useful, leave a like, it genuinely helps the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next episode.